In this video, I'll show you how you can configure Tyk to perform uptime testing so that you can continue serving API requests even if one of your API servers goes down. Let's take a look at how this is set up. In the API definition, we enable round-robin load balancing and add upstream target servers. This is done in the API settings section. We check enable round-robin load balancing, and then we add the targets. I'm using a local Docker installation with 2 HTTP bin containers. One is available at HTTP bin, so I'll add that. And the second is available at HTTP bin 2. I update the API definition. Okay, so that's now set up to balance requests between those two. Let's see how that's handled by the gateway in practice. This command makes 2 requests to the API. These will be load balanced across the 2 upstream targets. Here in the URL property, we can see that the requests were split between HTTP bin and HTTP bin 2. Each server received 1 request. This shows that the gateway is load balancing the request correctly. But what happens if one of these upstream targets goes offline? Since I'm using Docker, I can easily stop one of these containers. And if I run this request again, I'll get back a different response. Here we can see that the gateway could not proxy one of the requests. However, the request to HTTP bin 2 still works. We can also see that this issue was also picked up by the gateway application log. This problem can be avoided by having the gateway check the status of the upstream targets and have it automatically remove failing targets from the load balancer. To do this, we must first enable the gateway to perform uptime checks. In the gateway's tyk.conf file, you'll find an uptime test section. You must have set the disable property to false and also set the rest of the config to suit your requirements. Set the wait time to the number of seconds you want the gateway to wait between tests, and set the failure trigger sample size to the number of failed tests, which will trigger the gateway to set the hosters down. The enable uptime analytics setting will set the gateway to record analytics for the uptime testing. These can then be seen in the dashboard. And the checker pool size is the number of reserved threads the gateway will keep aside for running uptime testing. This number should be set to a figure that's higher than the total number of uptime tests you're running. This will prime the gateway to run uptime tests. But we also need to configure the API definition to begin checking the upstream targets. In the dashboard, go to the Uptime Tests tab. There are 2 things you need to set. First is to enable uptime testing by checking this box. And second is to add some uptime test URLs for the 2 upstream targets we are using. Click on Add. And add in your targets. The targets that you add must use the same host name as the upstream targets for your API. The actual full URL can be anything within that host name. So if you want to call a different endpoint, which is maybe a health check endpoint, then that's fine. So now I can update my API definition the gateway will reload and begin performing the uptime tests. Since the host is still down, we should see this reflected in the gateway log. Here we can see a number of tests that have found that the host is now down. This means that the gateway will no longer proxy requests for this host. Let's try running the API request again. This time we see that both requests worked, but they both went to the HTTP bin 2 host. This is to be expected because the gateway knows that HTTP bin is down. Now let's bring the container back up. And check that the gateway has detected that that has happened. Here we see that the gateway has detected that the host is now back up. And if we run our request again, we'll see that the gateway has resumed proxying to both of the upstream targets. And that's it. Now that the host is back online, the gateway is resuming the proxying, and in the dashboard we can see data on this in the Uptime Test Results section. Here under Uptime Data, there is a Service Uptime Dashboard that gives you an overview of all the tests that have been running, and there's also an Uptime Test list where you can see each test that's happened and the results.